Early voting in Chicago is now open in all 50 wards through Election Day on November 5th. Remember, any voter can vote at any early voting site no matter where they live in the city. And if you haven't registered yet or you recently moved, same-day registration is available at all early voting sites. Just bring 2 forms of ID, one of which should have your current address. Go on and check voting off your to-do list and vote early. Go to chicagoelections.gov for more information. Today on CityCast Chicago, new school board members sworn in, congressional races we're barely watching, and some of the sweetest things we read last week. Joining me to break it all down, executive producer Simone Alicea. It's Tuesday, October 29th. I'm Jacoby Cochran, and this is what Chicago's talking about. Morning, Simone. How you feeling?
Morning, Jacoby. I'm all right. How are you?
I ain't complaining. Overall, it was a good weekend. You know, one Hail Mary ain't gonna break me down for the entire week. Every Tuesday, me and the producers sit down and we go through some of the big stories we didn't get to over the weekend, some of the coolest things we read on the internet or were in our inbox. But before we get into those stories, Simone, it is the season of Best of Chicago. Our friends over at the Chicago Reader are putting together over, I don't know, like a 200.
It's a lot of stuff.
I feel like something like 200 awards to some of their favorite things across the city. Best parks, best activists, best sports teams, best podcasts, best email newsletter. And for the last 3 years, you and I have had the pleasure of winning Best Podcast, and now we need people's help to try to help us run this back for the 4th year in a row. What can they do?
Yeah, so right now we are in the nomination period, so you can head to the link in our show notes and nominate CityCast Chicago for Best Podcast. We're trying to win 4 years in a row here. And you can also nominate Hey Chicago for Best Email Newsletter. We think it's the best newsletter in Chicago. We know you do too. So head to the link and nominate us. You can do that through November 4th. So we're going to keep reminding you for the rest of this week. And you can find us in the City Life category.
Speaking of city life, I know we've been talking about the Chicago School Board more and more in the last few months, probably more than we ever have in our 3-year run, but it has constantly been in the news, y'all, between it currently being on the ballot for the first time ever in Chicago. But when we look at the current school board, there has been some shakeup in the last few weeks. Quick reminder, the entire board resigned a couple of weeks ago. Mayor Brandon Johnson quickly announced a new slate, and just last Thursday, all 7 school board members were sworn in. Simone, quickly remind us, who are the 7 people now sitting on the school board?
Yeah, so we have Reverend Mitchell L. Ikenna Johnson, who is now serving as the school board president, vice president Mary Gardner, members Olga Batista, Michaela Blaze, Debbie Pope, Frank Niles Thomas. Those 6 names were names we all knew when we had this big resignation, and then Mayor Johnson had announced he was appointing 6 new people. We have since learned who the 7th person will be. That's Dr. Rafael Yanez, who is a Chicago police officer. And for the first time, all 7 of these members met last week. But you would I think everyone was like, oh, what's going to happen? They're going to meet. What's going to, Nothing really happened. They swore themselves in, they took their oaths of office, they said some words, and then they, met behind closed doors to talk about personnel matters and sort of executive session kind of thing. But no big actions on the issues that have led us here, right? So just to catch people up again, right, there has been back and forth over the CPS budget. The previous school board voted on and set this budget that number one, pushed a pension payment onto the city, a pension payment for former CPS employees. And number two, didn't take into account raises and other costs associated with the new Chicago Teachers Union contract, which is still being negotiated. Mayor Brandon Johnson wanted the school district to take out this high interest short-term loan that is pretty financially risky. The district didn't want to do that. There's also reports, of course, that Johnson wants to oust CPS CEO Pedro Martinez, and that the previous board, all appointed by Johnson, as I remind you, all of those people were previously appointed by Johnson in 2023. They didn't seem willing to pull the trigger on ending that contract early.
With that in mind, I wonder if going into this week's meeting on Friday, you need at least 48 hours to update the agenda if you're going to be taking on something like the tenure of the CPS CEO. Right now, that's not on the agenda as far as I know, but I do wonder if that's something that will come up before the end of 2024.
Yeah, it's interesting. Everyone is still a little bit mum on the sort of employment issue for Martinez. Johnson does not comment on personnel matters. And, the district when they met last week didn't comment on this. One thing we did hear, though, was board president Johnson, not Mayor Johnson, but Mitchell Ikenna Johnson.
Mitchell Johnson.
Yes. Board president saying that they did seem to be aligned with Johnson's preference to push that pension payment that I mentioned back into CPS's court, that the district would take on that payment, $175 million. What will that mean for the budget that has already been passed, the budget for this school year that we're currently in right now? It's sort of unclear. The other sort of weird, complicating factor of all of this, right, as you mentioned, we're also voting on a school board. So, 21 people will be seated in January in a completely new structure. You should go back and listen to our episode with Chalkbeat Chicago editor Becky Vivi for just a breakdown on how that's supposed to work. But a complicating factor here is Johnson has sort of alluded to this idea that this new school board is sort of a way to transition to this hybrid school board where he's going to have to appoint 11 people anyway, in addition to the 10 that we're electing.
But it's not clear if any of these current 7 are shortlisted for those 11 appointments that he'll have to make. It's also not even clear if they'll be eligible, given we don't have the results of the election yet.
Because there are residency requirements for those appointments, right? If the person we elect lives on one side of the district, the person that Johnson appoints has to live on the other side. And so, I think the board members, are trying to do the best they can to be like, yeah, everything's in order. We've got things handled. This is a calm transition, and we're gonna do our best. So we'll definitely kind of keep an eye on, certainly any actions taken on Martinez, but also any contract or budget changes that might come as a result of this.
Maybe we'll get again more clarity during Mayor Johnson's budget address this week.
Yeah, that would be another big clue. Who knows? Maybe. I would love to get more clarity on anything regarding money. I think that would be great.
One big story that this new board did start to hear about was they heard from a string of parents and teachers at some of the 7 Acero charter school campuses. Acero is a charter network that runs in Chicago, and during this month, they announced that they are planning to close 7 of their 15 schools. It'll impact about 2,000 predominantly Latino students. And parents, administrators are talking up. CTU representatives have said they want CPS to step in and to take over these campuses, to which we haven't got any sort of clarity on how that would work. The campuses that are going to be closed are Casas on the Lower West Side, Cisneros in Brighton Park, Fuentes in Avondale, Paz in Little Village, Santiago in Ukrainian Village, Tamayo in Gage Park, and Cruz in West Ridge. I mean, sitting at this table once again, where parents and students and administrators are sort of hastily rushing to figure out what the future of their school is, how their students are going to be impacted, how their communities are going to impact it. This is not something that is new to the city of Chicago, but with the complications of the moratorium on the books and how that does or does not impact charter schools in the city, there's a real fear that not much may be able to be done between now and next school year.
Referring there to a moratorium on school closures that's in place, there's sort of a couple different things we're talking about, but most recently the previous Chicago Board of Education had voted to not to close any public schools until the end of the 2026-2027 school year, until the full elected school board was in place.
Right now, for people who are like, well, how could something like this be voted on? The charter school networks in Chicago, though they get funding from the public, they have their own school boards, they have their own administrators, and their 9-member board voted unanimously to close these 7 schools. And many parents and administrators felt blindsided, as they tend to when these announcements come down. And I think from a legacy point, thinking about how unfortunately commonplace this is in Chicago, many of the Acero schools sit in formerly closed Archdiocese of Chicago schools. And when I was in the 5th grade, my school at the time was a part of a dozen schools that closed at the end of that year, which was during a sort of transformative time in the early 2000s where multiple Catholic schools closed down. And so even CPS CEO Martinez said at the board meeting, he found out when the rest of us found out that this was happening. And so I think this is something to watch.
You know, charter schools, of course, also have an interesting political history in Chicago. You know, I think there was a real big push and move from leadership for many years, right, to sort of that sort of school choice model, right? But at the same time, there was also an equally loud and vocal opposition to those moves, right?
This money should be going into neighborhood schools that can sort of be controlled and under the jurisdiction of the district. And, you know, it seems like in some cases we've ended up in the same place.
Well, and sort of regardless of the sort of overarching situation that sort of led to this, I think what is interesting is that when you come down to it, you know, when a community is about to lose a school, it kind of doesn't really matter what kind of school it is.
Facts. Charter school, Catholic school, public school.
When a community is about to lose a school and like your kid may not go, we don't know where your kid is going to go. You know, I think it's just so destabilizing, regardless of sort of the sort of citywide politics and policy around, you know, how we're paying for school, et cetera. At the end of the day, you just want some stability for your kid. And so I can see why this has raised such concern among these parents and teachers.
As we said earlier, the board's next meeting will be later this week, Friday. One of the ways to follow along is by going to chicago.citycast.fm, bookmarking that website, and please follow our colleagues over at WBEZ, the Sun-Times, Chalkbeat Chicago, and the like. This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. As we transition from the spooky season into the thankful season, my word of the day is gratitude. I want to show gratitude to my family for supporting my passions. I'm grateful for all the folks who listen to me almost every day, and I'm especially grateful to my friends who always check in and let me know it's okay to not always be okay. Seriously, if it wasn't for my friends, I probably would have never taken the time to start therapy when I was younger. If you're thinking of starting therapy, let me be that friend for you and say, maybe give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online and designed to be convenient, flexible, and suited to your schedule. All you got to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists anytime for no additional charge. Let the gratitude flow with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/citycast today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/citycast. Simone, we are, a week away from Election Day, and we haven't spent a lot of time talking about the congressional races in Illinois, mostly because we really think about these races during primary season, because in Illinois, a lot of them are decided there. But I think it's still important. You think it's still important. We think it's still important that people remember who their congressional representatives are. So you know, as always, you came up with a way to gamify this.
Yeah, right. I think for the most part, incumbents are heavily favored to win across Illinois in our 17 congressional districts. But I do think it's a good time to remember who our representatives are and just like refresh our memory. So here's the game, Jacoby. In a series of matchups, I'm going to give you two incumbents, two districts, and I want you to tell me which representative has served for longer. has served in office for a longer period of time.
Bet.
And we'll do a cascade. So, whichever is the correct answer will be the matchup for the next one, and so on and so forth.
Okay.
First matchup, first district versus second district. That's Jonathan Jackson in the first district, which covers the mall of the south side and southwest suburbs, versus Robin Kelly in the second district, which is the southeast side and then way south into Danville.
All right, this is very easy. These are my two districts, and Jonathan Jackson is the newer congressperson. So Robin Kelly has been serving longer in the second, the now predominantly Black district, overtaking the first.
Ding, 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 ding. There you go. Robin Kelly has been in office since 2013. Jonathan Jackson in office since 2023. Both do have Republican challengers. In the second, it's Ashley Ramos, and in the first, it's Marcus Lewis. All right, so we're going to go second district, Robin Kelly, versus third district, Delia Ramirez, which is the northwest side and the west suburbs.
I do know Delia Ramirez came into office the same time as Jonathan Jackson. So, Robin Kelly is still the longest serving of those two.
There you are, right again. Ramirez's Republican challenger in the third is John Boris. So we're moving along to Robin Kelly still in the second district versus Chuy Garcia in the fourth district. Fourth district covers southwest sides and then heads west into the southwest burbs. Robin Kelly, Chuy Garcia, who's been in office longer?
Now, this feels like where I could get tripped up because Jesus Chuy Garcia has been a political figure for decades longer. However, I believe in terms of Congress, I was in college when Robin Kelly came to Peoria, to Bradley University, when she was running back in 2013. And I believe Chuy Garcia was not in Congress during that time. And so I'm going to stick with Robin Kelly.
There you are again. Chuy Garcia has been in office since 2019. Chuy Garcia is facing a Republican challenger, Lupe Castillo, and then another challenger by the name of Ed Hershey. There was actually no Republican primary in the fourth district because no one had filed to run. So this is sort of people wouldn't have seen these names in March, but they might be seeing the name here in November.
Got it.
Robin Kelly still in the second district versus fifth district, Mike Quigley. So this is the northwest sides into the northwest burb. I think Quigley is my representative. Robin Kelly, Mike Quigley, who's been in office for longer.
I feel like I got to switch it up now, mostly because I've seen Mike Quigley talk before, and he feel like he been around for a minute. I feel like he been in office for like 20 plus years. I'm going to go with Mike Quigley on this one.
Quigley is correct. 20 plus years is a little generous. He has been in office since 2009, but still quite a long time. He is facing Republican challenger Tom Hansen in the 5th district. Moving right along to the 6th district. This is sort of a tiny sliver of Beverly, Mount Greenwood, and then southwest into the west burbs. Sean Casten, who served longer in office, Mike Quigley or Sean Casten?
I'm going to go Mike Quigley here.
Yes, Quigley has served for longer than Casten. Casten has been in office since 2019. He is facing Republican challenger Nikki Conforti. This is one of the more slightly interesting races in Illinois, by the way. This was once a Republican seat. However, it has sort of become even more solidified for the Dems in redistricting, which you will see is a theme throughout this game. Moving right along to the 7th district, which is Danny Davis.
It's a wash from here, Simone. It's a wash from here,
it's
my
gonna
dog.
be tough.
I just had to get to this one because
That's all you had to know.
This is all I had to get to.
That's okay. Well, I'll move along after this since we know Danny, and I'll switch up the matchups. But 7th district, as a reminder, a very wide-ranging district, covers from Englewood up to the Loop, out to the west side, out to the west burbs. Danny Davis, Mike Quigley, who's been serving longer?
Danny Davis, the oldest serving congressperson in Illinois.
Do you remember what year he started?
98, 96. Between 96 and 98.
97 is when he started.
That's
when he was
between 96 and 98.
Yes. He does have a Republican challenger, Chad Coppey. But that has been Danny Davis's seat for a very long time. And
For a
obviously,
very long time.
Davis is heavily, heavily favored there. All right, let's move along outside of Chicago. We've got the 8th District, which covers the northwest burbs from like Des Plaines to Elgin. Raja Krishnamurti in the 8th District versus Jan Schakowsky in the 9th District, which covers many of the North Shore suburbs. So Jan Schakowsky or Raja Krishnamurti?
Jan.
Yes, very good. Jan Schakowsky has been in office since 1999. Krishnamurti is facing a Republican challenger in Mark Rice. Schakowsky is facing a challenger in Seth Allen Cohen.
That would make her the second longest serving.
That is correct. Yes. So let us once again move along because we've got the 10th District, which covers kind of the rest of the North Shore up to the Wisconsin border and then a little bit northwest. Brad Schneider, and then matching up with Bill Foster in the 11th District, which covers sort of Bolingbrook and Naperville out to the west from there. Between Bill Foster and Brad Schneider, who has been in office longer?
What Keke Palmer say? I'm sorry to that man. I do not know that man.
I know we're outside of Chicago now, so it's going to be tough.
I do not know that man. I'm gonna go with Brad Schneider.
That is incorrect. Schneider has only been in office since 2017, facing a challenge in Republican Jim Karras on this ballot. Bill Foster has served longer on 2 counts. And so he has been in office in the 11th District since 2013. However, he's been serving in Congress since 2008, but he used to be in a different district. He used to be in the 14th District, but there was, I think, some remapping happening there. And so we'll go from his 2013 date. He's facing Republican Jerry Evans in November. So who has served for longer? We've got Bill Foster in the 11th or Republican Mike Bost in the 12th District, which covers the southernmost tip of Illinois. Mike Bost or Bill Foster?
What did you say Foster's earliest date was?
2008. But we're only counting from 2013.
Oh, okay. I'm gonna stick with Foster.
Correct. Bost, very close though. Bost has been in office since 2015. He is facing a Democratic challenger in Brian Roberts. Moving right along, we have got Bill Foster in the 11th versus Nikki Budzinski in the 13th District, which is a very weird, skinny district that includes both Springfield and Champaign-Urbana. Who has served for longer, Nikki Budzinski or Bill Foster?
We just did these elections recently, so I'm going to stick with Foster.
Correct. Budzinski was elected, has been in office since 2023, seeing a challenger in Republican Joshua Lloyd, but Bill Foster has served for longer. Okay, 14th District, which covers DeKalb, Romeoville out to the southwest. Lauren Underwood, who has served for longer? Bill Foster or Lauren Underwood?
I do know Lauren Underwood is the youngest Illinois congressperson, and so I'm going to stick with Foster.
Correct. Underwood has been in office since 2019. She is facing a Republican challenger in James Martyr. And when she first won that district, she only won by a handful of votes. She's another one of these Democrats who's been helped by redistricting. And so looking to a much more secure race likely in November. Right. We're making our way to the end here. We've got Bill Foster again in the 11th versus Republican Mary Miller in the 15th District, which covers central southwest Illinois out toward the Iowa and Missouri borders. Who has served for longer, Mary Miller or Bill Foster?
I'm going to go Mary Miller.
No, Mary Miller has only been in office since 2021, but she is running unopposed in this election. So that one is definitely going Republican. We are back to Bill Foster and the 16th District, which is Republican Darren LaHood, which covers the northwestern border with Wisconsin down toward Peoria and Bloomington, but not including most of Peoria and Bloomington. Who has served for longer, Darren LaHood or Bill Foster?
Darren LaHood is definitely a name I heard when I was down in Peoria. So I'm going to go with Darren LaHood.
Wrong. Incorrect.
again.
Yes,
Wrong
Darren LaHood
again.
has only been in office since 2015. He is also running unopposed. So 2 Republicans in Illinois running
I
unopposed.
did know that.
We are down to our last matchup here. We've got Bill Foster in the 11th versus 7th District, Eric Sorensen, whose district covers sort of Rockford, southwest to the Iowa border, and then kind of back around to Bloomington.
All right, I do know Sorensen is one of them 2023 boys, so I gotta go back with Foster. So I gotta go back with Bill Foster.
There you go. Ding, ding, ding. Eric Sorensen, as you pointed out, took office in 2023. He is facing Republican Joe McGraw. This is probably the most competitive race in the state because national Republicans have shown a lot of interest and they think they can flip the seat. However, most analyses still have it leaning Democrat.
Come on, what was that, like 14-3?
Yeah, I think so. I think that's almost exactly right.
Hey, if the Bears ever went 14-3, go ahead and throw a parade for me. Go ahead and throw a parade. I don't even care how the season ends. We go 14-3 in the regular season. Tacos on me for all CityCast Chicago listeners. Last week, we were doing our fall member campaign. We want to give a huge shout out to every single person who signed up, who gave us a shout out. And because of that campaign, many of you reached out, sent us some extra special voicemail, some text. You wrote things as your reason why when you signed up. Simone, let's go through this mailbag a little bit, take out a couple of our favorites.
Yeah, I think some of my favorite notes were from people who kind of wrote in about why they love CityCast Chicago, and I was like, "You nailed it! That's what we do. That's exactly why we exist." My very favorite one was from new member Dan Nelson. Thank you, Dan, to becoming a member of CityCast Chicago, who said, "I'm new to Chicago, husband born here," and then in all caps, "and I got to recommend a restaurant that he didn't know and now loves." Dan, this is exactly why I exist. This is everything I want in my job is for you to be able to tell somebody something else that they didn't know. This is my raison d'etre. Thank you so much for this.
That was also one of my favorite because Dan actually gave 4 reasons, and 2 of those, this was reason number 3.
Yes,
reason
that's
number
true.
1 and reason number 4, Jacoby's voice. Jacoby's voice. Let's just remember that. Let's remember that, right? New restaurants, I love them. I'm there all the time. But Jacoby's voice. Come on. Reasons 1 and 4. What was another one of your favorites?
Similarly, Carolyn Braff wrote in and said, I've started singing some good news when the moment is right. Thank you for shining a light on all the important stories in their city and for doing it in such an engaging way. I'm a better Chicagoan because of you. That is, I think, maybe the highest praise. Better Chicagoan.
People who said they felt more engaged, they met new neighbors, they got more involved in their community. Like, I don't know, when this podcast first started and we were trying to conceptualize what this could be, and we would say that's what we want people to take away, even if it's just one person. I don't know. At the time, I still felt a sense of like, that's not really possible. Like, that's okay. That's like pie in the sky. But, you know, if we could just like make something cool, I'd be happy with it. But as more and more people have reflected that back to us, shout out to everybody, man.
Yeah, I think what's wild is that even applies to listeners and members who aren't even living in Chicago anymore. Yep. We got a few of these, which is just mind-blowing to me. Jenna Buss, who grew up in the city and suburbs, but then moved away, says, CityCast keeps me connected. Sometimes they connect me too much, and I start thinking about how I can move our home, business, and family back. Despite that not being in the cards for us, I appreciate my Chicago connection Monday through Friday. Janet, move back. Just do it. Just do it.
Kenyatta Wells said, I can't go a day without listening to y'all. I even talk to you guys as if I've known you all my whole life. And that, I appreciate that, because I like to think that people are like talking back to the podcast, or when they're introducing the podcast to their friends, they're like, oh my God, Jacoby and Simone this week, they was killing. My mama be acting like her and Sydney be kikiing. She's like, oh my God, I was reading the newsletter and Sydney is just so funny. I'm just like, I hear you, Ma. Let her know. Just respond to the email. Let her know.
You know, in addition to, thank you so much again to everybody who became a member during our fall member campaign. Your totes should be coming to you soon. You can obviously sign up to be a member anytime at membership.citycast.fm. But real special thanks to everybody who joined. It was really delightful. Another thing that we did last week is we did this episode called Essential Rules to Living in Chicago. And we had our own rules, a slew of different things that we think all Chicagoans should know. Y'all called in with some of your own rules. Let's hear from Jordan in Hyde Park.
Hey, my name's Jordan Muhammad. I'm from Hyde Park. We just moved here in July. My dad grew up in the area, and one of the rules that I wish someone had told me before we moved that apparently every single person knows is don't leave any metal in the alley, because that is the Pickup Express area. We left our table frame, our iron wrought table frame. We had the chairs and the tabletop up in our second floor apartment, and we left it out there for 6 hours overnight at 2:30 a.m. and we came back at 8 and it was gone. So don't be leaving your metal outside. Apparently everyone knows that rule, but now we know it as well.
Hey, the metal men of Chicago be out here. Them scrap trucks be moving. You will look on there and you'll see old washing machines. You will see old irons. You'll see it really is a treasure trove.
I also think there's sort of two points to this. Number one is the metal element, because not only if you leave it in the alley, but also even our producer Michelle Navarro was saying if you leave it outside in the front, say you've got metal chairs out for dibs, they might get picked up.
They will take them.
But also just leaving stuff in the alley in general. Alleys is where trash lives. That's what it's there for.
It's also a suggestion. You put a couch out there.
Yes.
That couch is gone.
That means it's not your couch anymore. That means you have relinquished control of the couch.
It's going to be like the ottoman in that episode of South Side. It's got a life of its own now, baby.
Yes. So I think that is a great tip and a great rule. And we heard another one from our friend Joel in Lakeview.
Hey, CityCast, it's Joel from Lakeview. Love the episode on the rules, unspoken, unwritten rules of being a Chicagoan. I had a friend of mine move from the West Coast out here, and after they were here about a week, they asked me, do I have to smile at everybody as I'm walking down the street?
Yes.
And of course, the answer is yes, of course. You're going to feel like
Yes.
they're not there? No, you definitely got to smile. That's that Midwestern friendly inside of this big city. Anyway, I thought that was a fun rule that I didn't even think about until an out-of-towner raised it.
No, you don't. But yes, you do. No, you don't.
I
but
totally,
yes, you do. But no,
I totally
you don't.
understand where this person's coming from as another fellow person from the West Coast who moved to Chicago. Like in Seattle, you do not talk to your neighbors. Like you do not talk to anybody. It's just not a thing, really. And then I came here and it was like strangers on the street. Like you make eye contact and you nod or you smile or you like. It doesn't like it's not just resigned to like your interactions like at the grocery store or like, you know, on the train or whatever. It's like you are walking from point A to point B, but there are other humans around. You better acknowledge that those other humans exist.
But I can't tell you the number of people in Chicago I told, be safe, get home safe. Hope you have a good day. Like, and I ain't never met these people. You just be like, you just pass somebody and y'all bump, slight interaction. My bad, G. Hey, man, all right, man, be safe out here. Be safe out. Like, it's the law of the land. And I definitely am for people who like, don't tell people to smile. Why aren't you smiling?
Sure.
Right. Definitely don't do that whole Jimmy Jam. But yeah, I take Chicago nice to the next level.
It is overall, I think, a genuinely kind, nice thing. It did take some adjusting when I moved here. I will say it definitely took some adjusting. Thanks so much again to everyone who wrote in with their essential rules. If you've got more, our phone number is 773-780-0246.
Whether we say it or not, every episode of CityCast Chicago is an invitation for you to chime in as well. Add your restaurant to the list. Add your opinion, your side of town, your neighborhood guide to the bunch. CityCast Chicago is not just this team, very small, hardworking team, but it's also built by all of our guests, all of our listeners, all of our readers. And the person who helps us steer all of that into something organized, manageable, and typically ends every day with that's an episode, our executive producer, Simone Alicea.
Hey, thanks, Jacoby. I think that's an episode.
Before we get out of here, I got to leave you with some good good news. I want to give a huge plug to our Hey Chicago newsletter editor, Sydney Madden, who has been curating our events calendar at chicago.citycast.fm. If you go there, you are going to find Diwali celebrations at Irving Park, a Halloween parade in North Halstead, Dia de los Muertos celebration in Pilsen, and y'all, I could keep going. Seriously, trunk or treat in Austin, Spooky Blast in Inglewood. I could keep going. Fall Fest in North Lawndale. I'm gonna stop there. Head over to our website, bookmark our events calendar, and tap in. As always, we appreciate you for listening and reading. We're gonna be back bright and early tomorrow. We'll talk to you then. Peace.